Chapter 761. All of those scenes flashed through his mind in the instant she shook her head. All of those scenes came crashing down upon him like a divine blade capable of severing heaven and earth. For more than 3 years, over 1,000 days and 1,000 nights, she had been the only person in his heart, yet when he returned to see her during the sea god fate matchmaking convention, she wasn't even willing to remove her veil for him. A sense of bitterness welled up in his heart, and it quickly transformed into an indescribable sense of agony. Big brother. Naya called out gently from beside him, and Tang Wuling turned toward her in a wooden manner before giving her a smile. Naya was rooted to the spot. She'd never seen a smile like this from her big brother. It was stiff and awkward, and tinged with a hint of dejection and despair. Her heart suddenly began to throb with excruciating pain. It was so painful that words failed to describe her suffering. She reflexively held on tighter to his hand. Meanwhile, Gu Yue looked on at him in the distance from beneath her veil, and unbeknownst to him, there were already tears in her eyes. Unbeknownst to him, her long eyelashes were trembling. She wanted so badly to remove her veil, but she knew that she had to sever all ties with him in the most direct way possible. On the train, they were discussing their future aspirations. There were lofty ones like Shishi's, plain ones like Shu Xiaoyon's, and serene ones like Shu Lizzie's. There was also get married to you. It was just a joke, but it had clearly made her very dejected. It was the first time he'd seen her so depressed. She was like a dead leaf shivering in the autumn wind. Just what had happened to her? Perhaps her aspirations truly were very, very heavy. So heavy that she had to continue carrying them even in the face of all of the doubts and objections she received from everyone. She didn't want to hurt this group of friends, so as opposed to lying to them, she simply refrained from telling them anything. Everyone has their secrets. You don't need to force yourself to tell us something you don't want to reveal. What are your aspirations? I want to join the army. He wanted to become more powerful so he could find his parents and Naya. He cast his gaze out of the window and smiled as he envisioned a bright future ahead. She seemed to have noticed his expression, and a series of scenes flashed before her eyes. On that night, her hair was drifting in the wind, and her eyes were no longer black. Instead, they'd taken on a faint purple hue. There was a ball of light flickering over her palm, and a final hint of purple rose up before vanishing in a flash. She was as beautiful and intriguing as a mystery on a moonlit night, and her eyes were like a pair of deep ancient wells. Life was a journey, and there were passengers and scenery along the way. I'll get off one day, but before that, I want to leave you with the most beautiful memories. I want to live forever in your mind as I am now, and I wish I could be immortalized in the passing scenery. The fourth segment of the matchmaking convention, affinity spanning 3 lives, drew to a conclusion. However, the moment that Tang Wuling had been waiting so eagerly for was dashed by a gentle shake of her head. Her wordless rejection filled his entire world with darkness. At this moment, all he wanted to do was leave this place as quickly as possible, then find a place to bury himself. All right, seeing as girl number 17 doesn't wish to make a choice, we certainly won't be forcing the issue. However, there is still one final segment left, so you can't leave for now. Girls, please return to your original spots. All of your choices have been recorded, and now, we'll be commencing the final segment of the Sea God Fate Matchmaking Convention. Happily Ever After. According to the rules, the initiative will go to our male participants during the Happily Ever After segment, and the men will be able to make the final decisions. If you choose one of the Celestial Maidens who have chosen you, then we offer you our sincerest blessings and congratulate you on a successful match made. During this segment, our Celestial Maidens who have chosen a man for themselves will have 30 seconds to say anything they want to the man of their desires. In particular, if multiple Celestial Maidens have chosen the same man, then they'll need to work hard to fight off the competition and seize the man's heart. If a male participant chooses someone who hasn't chosen them, then they'll be given a minute to deliver a confession. However, I have to warn you that according to past statistics, there's a very high chance of failure if you choose a woman who didn't choose you. During the past editions of our Sea God Fate Matchmaking Convention, the failure rate under such circumstances hovers in excess of 80%. At the same time, there's also something else I need to tell you. During this final segment, even successful couples could be challenged by others to steal away the male or female party. Couples must work together to fight off all challenges, and you'll have reached the finishing line after successfully arriving on the shore of the Sea God's Lake. All right, without further ado, we'll be commencing our Happily Ever After segment right away. I'll be drawing numbers to determine the sequence as usual. First up is Shishi. I didn't think we'd get to you so quickly. Looks like we can offer you our congratulations in advance. However, do take note that your challengers may issue their challenges now. Shishi looked around at all of the male participants in a vicious manner. One of the men standing beside him wore a resigned expression as he said, "Don't worry, bro, no one's going to challenge you. You're the only one among us with enough balls to marry a Titan giant ape." Shishi gave that man a vicious glare before slowly drifting forward the front of the group atop his lotus leaf in an elated manner. "I choose Yuan and Yui," he yelled even before his lotus leaf had come to a complete standstill. "Oi oi, it's not your turn to choose yet." Lan Muzi chuckled. Shishi puffed out his chest in a justified manner and said, "I don't care. I'm choosing her no matter what. There's no other choice." Yuan and Yui also drifted forward atop her lotus leaf and said, "I don't know whether it was the right decision to choose this embarrassment of a man, but all I want to do is get out of here as quickly as possible." Shishi immediately burst into laughter. "I'm yours from now on." He gently tapped the tip of his foot on his lotus leaf, propelling himself directly toward Yuan and Yui. Yuan and Yui really wanted to slap him into the water, but in the instant that he held onto her hand, she knew that she couldn't continue treating him in the same manner as she had in the past. Even after so many years, he never gave up, and he was constantly working tirelessly so he could be worthy of her. How could she have failed to see all this? Just because she didn't accept him didn't mean she paid no attention to him. He had many flaws, but his greatest strengths were his perseverance and his loyalty and love. He had never expressed any interest toward any other woman, and was constantly hanging around her. Perhaps he didn't know this, but what had truly moved her wasn't all his confessions, and nor was it the painstaking efforts he made to cultivate for her sake. Instead, it was the bucket of water that he left on her doorstep every morning back when she was living in the dormitory for working students. She liked the sight of him working for her sake. She liked the calm and earnest expression that was tinged with tenderness in his eyes as he filled the bucket for her. She had unintentionally caught sight of that expression on his face one day, and it had tugged directly on her heartstrings. In her heart, she'd already chosen him long ago, but she was afraid that she was just an impulsive crush for him. However, he had stood the test of time, bearing his determination and loyalty for her to see day after day, year after year. His efforts finally bore fruit, and he secured the heart of the woman of his dreams. All right, I hereby announce the first successful match made during the Sea God Fate Matchmaking Convention. Yuan and Yui and Shishi. Congratulations to the two of you. You two will be blessed by the Sea God and congratulated by the entire academy. We hope your love spans the next 3 lives, and that you may live happily ever after. Specks of light erupted into the air from around the lake, exploding in the sky to form vibrant fireworks. Shishi's face was illuminated by the light of the fireworks, and his usual nonchalant smile had completely disappeared. He held onto both of Yuan and Yui's hands and whispered, "Yuan, I'll be good to you. I promise. I'll use my life to protect and cherish you, and I'm willing to give up even the entire world for your sake. I love you. My heart is true, and I've only ever loved you in my entire life." Yuan and Yui stared blankly up at him, and her heart fluttered at the sight of his serious, smoldering expression. She lowered her head slightly in a shy manner and made an affirmative sound in response. Shishi was unable to control his emotions any longer, and he abruptly enveloped her in a tight hug. On this occasion, he wasn't pushed away. Instead, a pair of arms gently winged themselves around his waist. Chapter 762. Thunderous applause erupted from the surface of the lake, as well as the audience on the shore. The first match had been made, and everyone was cheering them on. Tears welled up in Shishi's eyes. He'd been waiting for this day for far too long. It had been such an arduous journey up to this point. Tang Wuling was also applauding with all his might with a wide smile on his face. "Congratulations, Yuan and Shishi." The fireworks faded, and the lotus leaves beneath Shishi and Yuan and Yui's feet turned golden as they carried the two of them toward the shore. There were no challenges, only blessings. Instead of immediately departing, they stood together alongside Shu Lizzie and Yu Xinglan, who had just gotten changed out of their wet clothes. "I'm sorry, Sister Xinglan, it's all my fault that we didn't get fireworks as well," Shu Lizzie said to Yu Xinglan in an apologetic manner. Yu Xinglan held onto his rotund hand, just as she had done countless times ever since their childhood. "There aren't enough fireworks here. I want more than this. You have to buy me fireworks." An excited look immediately appeared on Shu Lizzie's face. "All right. I'll buy all of the best fireworks in Shrek City, and I'll set them off only for you. Can you not be so corny?" Shishi chuckled in a teasing manner. "Speak for yourself." Shu Lizzie glared at him in response. Right at this moment, Lan Muzi's voice rang out from the surface of the sea god's lake. Next up is Tang Wolin. All four of them instantly fell silent upon hearing this, and as they turned their attention toward the ongoing convention, all of them reflexively clenched their fists. Their captain was back, yet they hadn't even had a chance to catch up yet. However, all of them were aware of just how important this segment was for him and Douluo. Why won't you remove her veil? And she didn't choose captain, either. Is she jealous? Shu Lizzie speculated. She shook his head with tightly furrowed brows. No, I don't think it's as simple as that. You guys know Douluo just as well as I do. If she wants something, she'll fight for it no matter the cost. Back when she first started pursuing Captain, she always sat right next to him, and even when we put our hands together, she'd always ensure Captain's hand was on the very bottom with her hand directly above his. Something must have happened between them that we don't know about, and I have a strong feeling Captain's disappearance also had something to do with this. I have the same feeling. If they can't rekindle the flame during this matchmaking convention, then Yuan and Yui heaved a faint sigh. That would not be the outcome any of them wanted to see. Tang Wolin was also rather surprised that he'd been drawn as the second male participant, and his lotus leaf gradually drifted forward to the front of the group. His joyful smile for Shishi and Yuan and Yui had already faded, and he stood with his back ramrod straight on his lotus leaf. He was already 18 years old. He was an adult. As a man, he couldn't allow himself to wallow in despair regardless of what hardships and adversity came his way. Even if his heart was throbbing with unbearable pain, he had to stand up straight like a man. Being a coward never resolved any problems, and nor would it earn him any sympathy. 3 of our celestial maiden chose Wolin earlier, and it's now their turn to make their confessions to him to try and win his heart. We'll be drawing your names at random again to determine the sequence. Yimeng, I'll let you do the honors. Tang Yimeng drew the first name. Wei Sijuo. Wei Sijuo raised her head and turned her gaze toward Tang Wolin. In that instant, she was suddenly instilled with a burst of confidence because Douluo hadn't taken off her veil, and nor had she chosen him. Could it be that their relationship had completely died after more than 3 years apart? In that case, perhaps she still had a chance. She glanced at the dragon spear goddess, Naya. She was indeed more beautiful than all of the other female participants, but she hadn't heard anything that would suggest that she and Tang Wolin had entered a relationship. Furthermore, she was only 16 years old. Long time no see, Wolin. Choosing you during this matchmaking convention is a decision that I've made after extensive consideration. In other words, if you hadn't appeared, perhaps I would have chosen someone else, but the fact of the matter is, you came. I began to first notice you back when we just first began attending Shrek Academy. In all honesty, in the beginning, I didn't like you at all. I thought you'd only become a student of Shrek Academy through sheer luck, and I thought you had no right to become our class president. However, you showed us with your actions time and time again that you deserve to be in that position. I watched you grow every single day, and my confidence began to waver. After losing to you over and over again, the image of you in my heart began to carry more and more weight. I'm a competitive girl. Ever since I was a small child, I always did my best in everything I tried, and I always wanted the best of everything. In my eyes, you're the best. Only you can make my heart flutter like no one else. I don't know how to flirt. All I can say is that with me by your side, you'll go further than with anyone else. Her confession wasn't very moving, but it most definitely came straight from the bottom of her heart. On the shore in the distance, Luo Bixing and Shu Yucheng were standing side by side, and both of them were soaking wet as they exchanged a wry smile with one another. They had already guessed her reason for choosing him. He was indeed the best. Do you have something you want to say, Wolin? Lan Muzi asked. Tang Wolin sighed. I'm very sorry, Wei Sijuo, but there's no direct correlation between love and power. In my eyes, you were just a fellow classmate. I already have someone else I like, so I'll have to turn you down. Wei Sijuo took a deep breath and asked, is it still her? A determined light appeared in Tang Wolin's eyes, and he nodded without any hesitation. Yes. Wei Sijuo nodded in response, and she suddenly smiled. I don't regret choosing you because you're the best, even in the way you treat your relationships. I can accept losing to her. After her voice trailed off, she rose up into the air, yet instead of returning to the shore, she jumped into the water instead, sinking into the lake just as Luo Bixing and Shu Yucheng had. Tang Wolin looked on with an apologetic expression as she departed, but this was the only response that he could give her. Lan Muzi sighed. That's a real shame. Next up is Dai Yuna. Tang Yunmeng announced. Dai Yuna's lotus leaf drifted forward, and she wore a dejected look on her face. She knew that his heart didn't belong to her as soon as he answered Wei Sijuo's final question. Long time no see, brother 3. I've been searching for you for so long, and I've finally been reunited with you at this matchmaking convention. Do you know how happy I am to see you again? It's been more than 3 years, and you should have only just gotten back, so I should be the last person who was with you. Have you forgotten everything we experienced in Dragon Valley? If it weren't for your help, I wouldn't be who I am today. You are the only man in my heart, and even if you don't choose me, that will never change. I don't like you because you're the best or anything like that. I like you because you're you. I like you, plain and simple. Tang Wolin heaved a faint sigh at the sight of the tears flowing down Dai Yuna's face. I'm sorry, Yuna, but as I'm sure you already know, I've already loved someone for a long time. I can't accept your feelings as my heart has been fully occupied by her for many years. I can only say that you came into my life too late. I like you too. You're a proud little princess, but you're very kind at heart. You're a good girl, but unfortunately, you appeared before me at the wrong time. There's no way for me to create more space in my heart for you. I can only ever see you as a little sister or a friend, but never as a lover. Dai Yuna stared blankly at him with a heartbroken expression as she listened to his euphemistic rejection. She didn't say anything else, but she didn't give up like Wei Sijuo had, either. Instead, she remained on her lotus leaf and chose to stay. All right, then our final celestial maiden will be our dragon spear goddess. It's your turn, Naya. As Tang Yunmeng's voice trailed off, the entire sea god's lake fell completely silent. Starlight and moonlight shone down from above, illuminating the rippling water of the sea god's lake, as well as the Naya's exquisitely beautiful features. She slowly drifted over to Dai Yuna's side, and her eyes were rippling with a special kind of emotion. She was no longer looking at him with the eyes of a little sister looking at her big brother. Tang Wolin shuddered slightly as he also sensed the shift in her demeanor. Big brother. Naya called out gently. Naya, you. Tang Wolin's brows furrowed slightly. Naya smiled and continued. Big brother, did you know that I'd already developed feelings for you from the moment you took me in when I was just 3 years old? You were nowhere near as strong as you are now, but you stood in front of all of those bad people to protect me. Not only are you kind, you're also courageous, and you possess far more mental fortitude than anyone else of your age. When you were 6, you awakened your marital soul, only to find that it was blue silver grass, widely renowned to be a trash martial soul. The silver lining was that you also awakened soul power at the same time. You aspired to become a soul master. At the time, you didn't even dare to imagine becoming a battle armor master, so you said that you wanted to become a mega pilot. Chapter 763. Naya appraised Tang Wolin with a gentle look in her eyes, and in that instant, it was as if he were the only person she could see. But in order to become a soul master, you'd need soul spirits, which cost a lot of money. Our family wasn't very wealthy, despite the fact that our parents really did work very hard, so you took up forging at just 6 years of age. I recall when you first started that you were so tired after returning home every day, you couldn't even muster up any facial expressions. You'd always slump straight onto the bed, and you couldn't even hear me when I tried to talk to you. However, you didn't give up. You continued to practice forging, and after receiving your wages, you'd use all of it that you didn't save up to buy lollies for me. I still remember those lollies. They were really, really sweet. Do you remember how I asked you one day if you'd miss me if I were to go away? Tang Wolin listened to Naya's words in an entranced manner, and his mind wandered back to his childhood home where he'd lived over a decade ago. My aspirations lie among the stars. He was a fair-skinned young boy with black eyes and black hair, and he traveled to East City alone, wading into the unknown with nothing more than his hopes and dreams. He had his trash martial soul, blue silver grass, and his pitiful rank 3 innate soul power. In that massive city, he was like an insignificant grass seed drifting around, trying to achieve the dreams he held dear to his heart. When other kids of his age were still basking in the love and adoration of their parents, he had already lost his home. If I were to leave one day, would you miss me? Of course I would. I would miss you very, very much. The cool balmy breeze in the night massaged his cheeks, and a warm sensation welled up in his heart, and he smiled. This was not a wry smile, but instead, a reminiscent one. In his heart, that silver-haired girl had never strayed far away. She was always tucked away in a certain corner of his memories, standing under the sunset, calling him big brother in her sweet voice. I am Tang Wolin. My aspirations lie among the stars. When an ordinary seed grows into a lush grassland, would I be able to reunite with you? Big brother, I like you. I love you. I'm willing to spend every single moment of the rest of my life by your side. Can you let me love you? I'm serious. Naya's expression was indeed very serious, so serious that even Atlas Douluo was rather stunned by her resolve. Ripples began to surge through Tang Wulin's heart, which had just been plunged into complete despair not long ago. If he had to pick the most important woman in his life, then he honestly wouldn't be able to make a choice between his mother, Naya, and Dou Yue. However, never did he think that Naya would say something like this to him in front of so many people during the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention. Naya, you're my little sister. No, I'm not. I'm only your Naya, and we're not related by blood. I don't want to be your little sister anymore. I want to be your Naya, she said in a stubborn manner. Tang Wulin's body was trembling gently. Time's up, Naya. In order to ensure fairness, I can't let you keep talking. Tang Yunmeng's voice was a little strange, and she simply couldn't help it. Compared to the vast majority of people present, who were looking on with their jaws on the ground, she was already putting on a very calm display. Naya lowered her head as tears welled up in her eyes. She had finally said everything in her heart aside from one sentence. Big brother, if you don't choose me, then. Tang Wulin had been able to harden his resolve and reject Residuo, as well as Dai Yuna, but Naya's confession had truly shaken him to the very core. He had once vowed to never let Naya shed tears again, but never would he have thought that he would be the one making her cry someday. Naya, how can you be so foolish? For some reason, there was an indescribable feeling deep within his heart. It was just as Naya had said, they weren't related by blood. Naya was a little sister that he'd taken in, and he looked after her as if she really were his little sister. Naya suddenly looked up and appraised him with an intense gaze. If I'd never left, no one else would have been able to steal your heart. Tang Wulin shuddered upon hearing this. If she hadn't left and had always stayed by his side. After her voice trailed off, Naya cast her gaze toward the veiled figure behind her. Meanwhile, Lan Muzi and Tang Yunmeng both focused their attention on Tang Wulin. Lan Muzi couldn't help but sigh. I didn't think that I would meet you for the first time under such complicated circumstances. Junior disciple brother Wulin, you have so many exceptional junior disciple sisters displaying their love for you, including even our very own little goddess. Now then, it's time for you to make your decision. As a man who's been through this stage of his life, I must advise you that the best way to handle the situation is to be decisive and forthright. Otherwise, you'll only be hurting everyone involved. Make your choice now. As opposed to hurting everyone, it's much better to show them your heart. If it weren't for Naya's confession, then Tang Wulin wouldn't be hesitating at all. However, he truly didn't know how to decide now. The last thing he wanted to do was hurt Naya. What should I do? What should I do? Tang Wulin stood on the surface of the sea god's lake in a slightly slack-jawed manner, and his resolve had been shaken for the very first time. If he'd known that this was how the matchmaking convention was going to turn out, then he would have rather not attended at all. He truly felt as if he were being tortured as he stared at two of the most important women in his life. Junior disciple brother Wulin, please make your choice, Lan Muzi urged in a low voice. Tang Wulin took a deep breath with all his might, trying to muster up all of the strength in his entire body. He knew the answer in his heart. He didn't want to hurt Naya, but it was even more unappealing to him to lie to her. Furthermore, despite how complicated everything had become, he didn't want to give up on this chance, no matter how slim it was. I'm sorry, Naya, I choose girl number 17. It seemed to have taken him all of his strength to utter those few words. Gasps and cries of surprise rang out across and around the entire lake. No one could believe that he had rejected the dragon spear goddess' heartfelt confession and chose girl number 17 instead, especially when she hadn't chosen him, and hadn't even removed her own veil. How was this possible? He turned down Residuo, Dai Yuna, and Naya, all three of whom were top-notch beauties. Instead, he'd chosen a woman who seemed to have shown no interest in him. On the shore. Nice. As expected of our captain, he's just as badass as ever. It's just that Naya. She reflexively pumped his fist. Yuan and Yui, Yuzinglan, and Shu Lizzie also wore nervous expressions on their faces. They knew that the moment of truth had come for Tang Wulin. Faint light shimmered in the air, and girl number 17's lotus leaf slowly drifted to the forefront. Lan Muzi and Tang Yunmeng glanced at one another, only to see their own astonishment mirrored in each other's eyes. Never did they think that Naya would get rejected. After Tang Wulin had given her his response, Naya turned deathly pale, and she reflexively took a backward step, only barely catching herself after half her foot had trodden into the water. Lan Muzi gulped silently before turning to girl number 17. According to our rules, you must remove your veil now, and listen to a 1-minute confession from him. Girl number 17 hesitated momentarily before slowly raising her hand to remove her veil, revealing a pale face with black hair and black eyes. Compared to Dai Yuna and Naya, her appearance was quite ordinary, and she paled in the face of their beauty. Tears were already flowing uncontrollably down her face, and her lips were quivering gently. Tang Wulin smiled at the sight of her tears. She wasn't completely heartless after all. Seeing the tears flowing down her face, he suddenly felt as if all of his suffering had been worth it. You should have chosen her. Dou Yue turned toward Naya's direction. Naya remained completely silent. Dou Yue then said something that was rather inexplicable. I didn't want to win. Naya suddenly smiled, despite the fact that her face was still deathly pale. She raised her head and turned to Dou Yue in a proud manner. Some things aren't up to you. Tears began to flow freely as Dou Yue closed her eyes. But do you know how heavy a price he'll have to pay for this? Do you know how difficult our future will become? Naya remained completely determined as she said, I don't care. All I want is to give the entirety of myself to him. Tang Wulin stared blankly at the two of them. When had these two become so close with one another? And what were they saying? Why couldn't he understand a single word? Lan Muzi also had no idea what they were saying, but the show had to go on. It's your turn, Wulin. You have 1 minute. Chapter 764. However, Tang Wulin shook his head before turning to Dou Yue. I don't need 1 minute. I only need to ask her a single question. Dou Yue, I've only loved one woman in this world, and it's you. Do you love me? He wanted to say countless things to her, but that was the only question he could muster up at this present moment. Perhaps just this one question was enough. All he needed was an answer that could make him cast aside all of his inhibitions. He raised his right hand and flipped his palm over. Golden scales spread along his exposed wrist before covering his entire hand. Sharp golden claws appeared on the tips of his fingers, and he aimed those claws directly at his own head. An indescribably powerful blood essence aura abruptly erupted from his own body, and in the instant that aura appeared, all soul masters present with dragon-type martial souls let loose muffled groans as their faces paled significantly. Even Long Yue was no exception to this. How was this possible? How could his blood essence be so powerful? Long Yue wore a completely astonished look on his face. He had thought that after 3 years of arduous cultivation, he was on an entirely different level. 3 years ago, Tang Wulin had been no match for him in a one-on-one battle, and even though he held a bloodline advantage, there was no way he'd be able to defeat him without Dou Yue's help. He had thought that following the passage of the last 3 years, he would have widened that gap even further. He'd become a two-word battle armor master, and if he were to fight with all his might, he could even pose a threat to a titled Douluo. However, right after Tang Wulin had unleashed his bloodline aura, Long Yue was astonished to find that his own volatile bloodline power was struck by the powerful urge to conceive. He felt as if all of his bloodline power would leave his body to kneel down at Tang Wulin's feet should he will it to be so. Compared to 3 years ago, his bloodline aura had become countless times more powerful. How was this possible? How could anyone's bloodline aura be so ridiculously powerful? Big brother, don't. Naya screamed, but she didn't dare to move a single inch. She could clearly see that Tang Wulin's golden dragon claws were mere millimeters from his head, and that he'd be able to take his own life in a split second. I need to know your answer, the true answer in your heart. Don't try to lie to me. I can sense the authenticity of your words through your eyes and your bloodline. Tang Wulin looked into Dou Yue's eyes with a scorching gaze. Dou Yue stared blankly at him, and tears no longer flowed from her eyes. All of a sudden, it was as if her mental walls had been completely razed to the ground. She nodded over and over again, with all her might as tears began to flow freely once again. She squatted down on her lotus leaf and threw her arms around her knees as she nodded, seemingly in an uncontrollable manner. Tang Wulin smiled. It was a smile of immense pride. He stepped forward as he put down his right hand and reached her in a flash. He then wrenched her from her lotus leaf and dragged her into his arms. A loud dragon's roar rang out, and a colossal creature appeared beneath Tang Wulin's feet, carrying both him and her into the air. The gargantuan creature's thick and powerful hind legs were planted on the lakebed of the sea god's lake, yet even just the part of its body that was exposed out of the water was over 50 meters tall. This was the massive tyrant dragon. However, it appeared to be an actual living creature more so than a soul spirit. Its thick black scales, huge crimson eyes, and its terrifyingly gigantic body were all an indication of its unmatched power and status as the most powerful land dragon. No matter how powerful Long Yue was, his mountain dragon king was only a martial soul, yet it was as if Tang Wuling had summoned a real tyrant dragon. Furthermore, it didn't seem to be an ordinary tyrant dragon, either. Illuminated by the lights radiating from the lake around it, there were faint hints of golden luster that could be seen on its inky black scales. Gu Yue had her face buried in Tang Wuling's shoulder as she held onto him with all her might. In the instant that Tang Wuling threatened to take his own life with his golden dragon claws, all of the mental walls she'd painstakingly built up during the past few years finally shattered. They were completely and utterly destroyed. She was no longer able to repress the emotions deep within her heart, and they erupted uncontrollably in the form of free-flowing tears. How could she have possibly forgotten everything they'd been through and all of the intimate moments they'd shared? Whenever danger arose, he was always the first one to shield her with his own body without any hesitation. How could she forget about all that? Her heart wasn't made of stone. In the beginning, she may have approached him with ulterior motives in her heart, but as time passed, all of those impure motives gradually disappeared. Even though she knew that she shouldn't do this, she didn't pay this any heed initially as she believed in her own ability to restrain and control herself. However, when she finally realized that everything was beginning to slip out of her control, it was too late. Tang Wuling had already taken root in the deepest corner of her heart. How was she supposed to simply cut him out of her life? In the instant that he'd taken off his mask during the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention, her emotions had almost immediately gotten the better of her. She was only able to barely repress her emotions after using up what seemed like all of her strength. She knew that it was better for her to concede than to be with him. Otherwise, everything would be impacted by him. Hence, she was unwilling to remove her veil this entire time, and she was even hoping that he would have moved on from her. However, when he had delivered that confession, she knew that she was wrong. Tears began to flow down her face, but her heart was filled with joy. The final layer of inhibitions she'd set up for herself completely crumbled in the instant that he raised his golden dragon claws. In that moment, all she wanted to do was to hold him tight and melt into his arms, basking in the warm embrace that she'd so sorely missed during the past 3 years. She wept with all her might, venting all of her internal conflict and frustration in an instant. She didn't want to think about anything else. For now, she just wanted to be his woman. Tang Wuling held her in a tight hug, and his despairing heart abruptly returned to life. In the instant that he saw her crying face, he knew that she still loved him, and that time hadn't managed to dilute their feelings in the slightest. She was just putting on a facade to try and hurt him. As for why she decided to put on that facade, was that really important? Diana looked up with a blank expression at the two people caught in a tight embrace atop the giant dragon's head, and she suddenly felt like she was completely superfluous here. She didn't hate him at all. It was just as he had said. They simply met one another too late. Naya wasn't crying, and nor was she sad. She was smiling, and her smile was filled with joy and elation. No one knew what she was smiling about, and in any case, very few people even saw the smile on her face. Our second successful match has been made. We hope that Wuling and Gu Yue's love spans the next 3 lives, and that you may both live happily ever after. It was now time for the challenge segment, and Long Yue had been raring to go, but for some reason, he simply couldn't bring himself to take the first step forward. In the face of the massive tyrant dragon and the powerful bloodline aura emanating from Tang Wuling's body, he couldn't even muster up the urge to fight him. Furthermore, wasn't this the outcome that he wanted to see? He hadn't accepted Yuna's love, after all. He reflexively glanced at Shumia, the overbearing and aggressive woman beside him, and he was surprised to find that tears were flowing down her face. She was looking up at the couple standing atop the tyrant dragon's head, and she'd been moved to the point of tears. In that instant, Long Yue felt as if his heartstring had been gently tugged on. This was a feeling that he'd never experienced before. Chapter 765. The tyrant dragon slowly lowered its head, carrying them back down to the surface of the lake. Silver light flashed from Gu Yue's body, and in the next instant, both she and Tang Wuling disappeared from the sea god's lake. She had teleported the two of them very far away, and no one was able to catch sight of them even on the shore of the lake. Their sea god fate had been sealed on the sea god's lake. This was undoubtedly going to be another heartwarming story from the sea god fate matchmaking convention that many people would be talking about for years to come. The surface of the sea god's lake was still filled with dazzling light, but all of the light seemed to have dimmed in a figurative sense following their departure. It was as if the two main characters had left the stage. Tang Wuling had never known that Gu Yue could be so passionate. Her entire body was burning up, and she seemed to be striving to melt into his chest. She was taking the initiative to kiss him. It was a kiss tinged with salty tears, and her lips were soft and scorching hot, reflecting the indescribable emotions erupting in her heart. Tang Wuling had also been repressing his love for her for many years. He held onto her with all his might, trying to fuse together with her so that they'd never be separated again. He didn't know where he was. All he knew was that there were trees all around him. In his arms was the most important woman in his life, and their kiss stretched on for a very, very long time. Both of them were very inexperienced, to the extent that they didn't know how to proceed. He merely had his arms wound tightly around her back and her backside, while she had her arms coiled around his neck in a vice-like grip. After a long while, their lips finally parted after both of them had begun struggling to breathe and their lips had become slightly swollen. Even so, they refused to let go of one another as they panted heavily into each other's ears. If I told you that I didn't love you, you were really going to kill yourself, weren't you? Gu Yue panted. Why would I kill myself? I was just going to scratch an itch on my head with my golden dragon claws. Tang Wuling replied with a faint smile. Gu Yue raised her head to look up at him, and he took advantage of the opportunity to give her a light peck on the lips. You're a liar. Gu Yue grumbled. Tang Wuling smiled. If lying is the way to your heart, then I'm willing to tell lies for the rest of my life. Gu Yue, I love you. Gu Yue faltered slightly, and following that eruption of scorching emotions, her sense of logic returned to her as she gradually began to calm down. She buried her face into his shoulder again with a bitter look in her eyes. You shouldn't have done this. Do you know what you're doing? You're playing with fire. I can't be with you. Our paths are destined to diverge toward different directions, so we can't be together. Tang Wuling replied in a calm manner. If everything was predestined from the very beginning, then why has all of this still happened? All of these events that have taken place in the past have already altered the course of destiny. This is our new destiny. No matter how difficult it's going to be or what we face in the future, I'll always be by your side to face everything together. You don't understand. Gu Yue closed her eyes with an agonized expression. I do understand. Tang Wuling countered in a resolute manner. He didn't ask Gu Yue what she was worried about as he knew that she would tell him sooner or later if she were willing to do so. Even if she refused to tell him, he was still willing to face whatever trials and tribulations were thrown at them with her by his side. Gu Yue gripped onto his shoulders, reluctant to part with his embrace. Wuling. She looked up at him with a serious expression. Tang Wuling smiled and encouraged. Say what you want to say. I'm sure you already know my heart, and you should also know that I've always been a very determined person. A wry smile appeared on Gu Yue's face. If you were to discover, one day, that I'd become your enemy, what would you do? Tang Wuling replied. If such a day comes and there's no way for us to stand on the same side, then I want you to kill me so I can live on in your heart. That way, we'll still be completely inseparable. His reply was very calm and placid, but tears flowed uncontrollably from Gu Yue's eyes again. Tang Wuling wiped the tears from her cheeks and cupped her face gently with his hands. What happened? Tell me, and I'll face everything with you together. Gu Yue shook her head vigorously. No, I can't tell you. If such a day really does come, then perhaps I really will kill you. Aren't you afraid of death even a little bit? Think about your family. Let me go. If I'm not by your side, then I can at least control everything. But if I stay with you, you're going to die because of me at some point. Tang Wuling smiled. So the core issue is that I'm still not powerful enough. Don't worry, Gu Yue. I'll work hard to become powerful and I'll protect you with everything I have. Tell me what's posing a threat to you. Who are they? We're in Shrek Academy. Is there someone on this continent that can stand against our entire academy? Gu Yue continued to shake her head with all her might. No, it's not like that. You don't understand. Gu Yue was clearly getting very worked up, and Tang Wuling hurriedly hugged her to his chest again. It's okay. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. You can reveal everything to me when you think the time is right. I'm sorry, Gu Yue, but I really, really love you. Do you know that? Please don't leave me. No matter what hardships get thrown our way, I'll always be by your side. Gu Yue didn't say anything else. She knew that nothing she said could make this man's resolve falter. But what was she supposed to do? Could she really be with him just for her own temporary happiness? They were no longer children anymore. They'd both grown up and become adults, and the relationship between them had also developed and matured. Following the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention, if she were to continue to be with him, she knew that there was no way she'd be able to control herself. She'd only sink deeper and deeper. The two of them continued to embrace one another tightly. Let's go to my place, Dou Yue whispered. Sure. I don't have anywhere to go anyway. Indeed, Tang Wuling had only just returned earlier the same day, so he didn't even have a place to live yet. Silver light flashed again. She was unwilling to extricate herself from his arms, so she teleported both of them away again. Tang Wuling was surprised to find that even though his spiritual power had reached the spirit of this realm, Dou Yue still gave him an unfathomable feeling when she activated her soul power. Just what kind of level had her spiritual power reached? The place that Dou Yue was living in was rather similar to Nai's residence. It was a small wooden cabin on the Sea God's Island, as opposed to one of the inner court dorm rooms. This was a privilege that none of the normal inner court disciples were entitled to. She'd only been assigned this cabin as she was the leader of Shrek's 7 monsters. The natural energies on the Sea God's Island were far more abundant than in the outside world. Regardless of what kind of martial soul one had, they benefit immensely from cultivating here. She lay down on her simple wooden bed that was only covered by a bedsheet and continued to snuggle up in his arms. He held onto her, and in that moment, he had no intention of taking their relationship to the next level on a physical basis. He only had the purest love for her in his heart, and it was as if nothing else were important as long as he could keep holding her like this. Before he knew it, her breathing had become slow and even, and she completely relaxed in his arms. Her furrowed brows had also relaxed, and she was sleeping in his arms like an infant. He smiled as a sense of exhaustion also spread through his entire body. He hadn't had a chance to rest yet since his return, and at this present moment in time, he was feeling completely satisfied with the woman of his dreams in his arms. He closed his eyes and also dozed off, entering a world that belonged to only him and her. The Sea God's lake was beautiful in a mysterious and intriguing way during early mornings. The entire surface of the lake was covered by a layer of watery mist, and she had been standing by the lake for a long time already. Her shoulders were wet from the morning dew, but she made no effort to brush away the moisture that had gathered. Her silver hair swayed gently in the light breeze, and she cast her gaze toward the morning mist in the distance, looking like a gorgeous elf. Her large purple eyes reflected the rippling surface of the lake, and she wore a faint smile on her face. Another figure silently strode over before stopping by her side. Her black hair was also swaying in the wind, and her face was flushed in a vibrant manner. However, the smile on her face vanished as she caught sight of the silver-haired figure. They stood side by side, casting their eyes out toward the clear lake. You won, Naya said in a relaxed voice. You seem to be quite happy about that. Dou Yue brows furrowed slightly. Naya chuckled. I am. I actually really wanted you to win, and I knew that you'd win from the very beginning because I know him far too well. I was only ever an interlude in his life, and the confession I made to him is only something that will give me a suitable excuse to leave. He'll be very sad if you leave, Dou Yue said. Naya shook her head in a self-deprecating manner. I lost, so I have to leave, but I knew that my loss was sealed from the very beginning, and I have no choice but to lose. Otherwise, he really will be killed, isn't that right? Dou Yue fell silent upon hearing this. Chapter 766. Naya sighed. Back when we first made our bet, I chose to accept the bet as I knew that you were looking for an excuse to kill him without having it weigh on you mentally. I couldn't not accept the bet because at the time, you would have killed him without any hesitation, even if doing so would have cast a shadow over your heart. Do you regret your decision now? Naya asked. Dou Yue faltered slightly upon hearing this. Do I regret this? I don't know. Indeed, she really didn't know whether she regretted her decisions. Naya continued. If you didn't want all of this to happen, then you shouldn't have chosen to integrate yourself into the human world from the very beginning. You made the right decision. Only by gaining a greater understanding of humans can we find the best way to destroy them. As a result, we discovered that humans do have redeeming features. At the very least, their emotional range is something that we don't possess. Hence, I came into existence. In order to make yourself seem like a real human in your youth, you had to seal yourself away in order to truly integrate into human society. Thus, the human part of your soul was born. When you discovered that your human emotions were developing out of your control, it became impossible for you to forcibly get rid of me because that would inflict significant harm on yourself. All of this is closely related to my big brother. The warmth and love that he gave me allowed me to understand what human emotions were. In your desperation, you separated me from your body so I could become my own independent entity. However, I'm a part of you no matter what, and we're still a single being. Hence, you made a bet with me that my brother would fall in love with you and abandon me for you. If you win, you'll prove that all human emotions are fake, and I'll fuse back into you. If you lose, you told me that you'll allow me to be my own separate person forever. Unfortunately, I possess your intelligence, as well as human emotions, and it didn't take me long to realize that it was impossible for me to live out my life as a separate being. I take up 30% of your powers. If I'm allowed to live on as a separate being, you would no longer be you. Hence, there's no way you can discard me. If you'd lost, you would have killed my brother and forcibly fused me back into your body. Isn't that right? Dou Yue's face paled slightly as she listened to Nai's words. Dou Yue, I was willing to make this bet with you in the beginning because I knew that you didn't understand anything about human emotions. In your eyes, the relationship between my brother and me had to be romantic love, but you're wrong. In reality, the relationship between us is more so familial love. Perhaps I love him more than that, but he definitely only loves me as family. In contrast, his love towards you is romantic love rather than familial love. Those two different types of love are completely different. So in reality, he never abandoned me, and nor did he betray me, even though he chose you. I lost, but this is not the outcome you wanted, so it's really hard to say who actually lost here. Dou Yue looked deep into her eyes. Do you really think I didn't know what you were plotting? Naya smiled. Of course you knew. You're far too smart not to realize what I was up to. However, when you tried to distance yourself from my brother, that was an indirect admission that you'd already fallen for him. Unfortunately for you, love infiltrates the heart in an extremely subtle way. By the time you realize you've fallen in love, it's already too late because he already has a permanent spot in your heart. I know you've been trying to repress your feelings and deny yourself, but the more you do that, the deeper he takes root in your heart. Dou Yue, have you noticed that as soul beasts, including even beast gods, are too simplistic in our emotions? Regardless of how powerful you are or how immense your spiritual power is, there's no way you can withstand an assault from human emotions. It's not something you can see, but it truly exists. A wry smile appeared on Dou Yue's face. Do you really think that you'll be saving him by doing this? Naya sighed. At the very least, this will allow him to live longer. Once he becomes powerful enough, I'm sure no one will be able to kill him as long as you can't bring yourself to do so. Face your true feelings, Dou Yue. Hatred will only blind you from seeing what's truly important. Dou Yue suddenly flared up with rage. You really sound like a human right now. Naya smiled. I've always been a human. At the very least, I've always thought of myself as a human. Hence, I don't want to see the destruction of the human race. I'd rather see everyone coexist in harmony. I love my big brother. I love my parents. I love a world with humans in it. You won, but you also lost. I sincerely hope that you'll have a happy ending with him. Dou Yue's breathing suddenly began to accelerate. Do you really think I can't work up the resolve to kill him? Naya shook her head. Of course you can't. You'll never be able to do it, even without my existence. Otherwise, why would you have waited until now? You've always been so decisive when it came to slaughter. When have you ever hesitated like this? When you hesitated for the first time, perhaps there was a chance that you still could have killed him. However, after you hesitated for the second time, for the third time, there's no way that you can bring yourself to kill him. You and I are both aware of this. After I fuse back into you, you will be me, and I will be you, but you'll be even more heavily impacted by human emotions, and that will only make it more difficult for you to strengthen your resolve. Just love him with all your heart. My big brother really is a very, very exceptional man. We don't know where his golden dragon king bloodline comes from, but even you have to admit that he's the only one in the human world worthy of us. Dou Yue wore a completely defeated expression on her face. The worst decision I've ever made was to make that bet with you. No, I should have never separated you from myself in the first place. At least I would have been able to gradually erase the effect human emotions have had on you. You lost, and I also lost. You're right, there's no way for me to kill him, so I can only leave him and hope that time and distance will make our feelings fade. Perhaps only then will I be able to kill him without even noticing it. Alternatively, perhaps he'll become powerful enough to kill me someday. You know that there's no way to mediate our conflict. This is a conflict between humans and soul beasts, as well as a conflict between gods and beast gods. There's no way for either him or me to resolve this conflict. Naya fell silent upon hearing this, and she was finally beginning to panic. But if you and I both leave, he's going to be so sad. Dou Yue shuddered in response. That's still better than if I were to stay by his side, only for my minions to escape my control and kill him. I'm still far from undoing the seal on my own body. My core has already awakened, but you know just how powerful my subordinates are. There are some of them who should have even become beast gods long ago, and my current self is not powerful enough to completely subjugate them. Hence, I have to go. Naya bit down on her lower lip. Perhaps you're right. You've really changed. Dou Yue, you've learned to think for the sake of others, especially for his sake. I understand now. You're leaving to give him more space to grow. You're hoping that he'll become so powerful one day that even you won't be able to kill him. But you know that's impossible. The divine realm had already ceased to exist, so he can never reach your level. Gu Yue smiled. You understand things on a surface level, but you don't truly understand. You don't know just how important a position he occupies in my heart, and you don't understand how much of me has become assimilated by humans. You're right, I regret my decision to integrate myself into the human world. However, I have to carry out my mission, but I don't want to hurt him, so let me face this conflict on my own. I don't know what I should do, but I have to keep forging ahead. Come back to me, Naya. From this day forth, I'm no longer Gu Yue. My name will finally be complete again. I will be known as Gu Yuna. Specks of light began to shimmer, and Gu Yue's body suddenly took on a transparent silver color. A hexagram emerged beneath her feet, which conjured up an invisible barrier then enshrouded them within. If anyone was situated nearby, they discovered that there were no energy fluctuations seeping out of that silver world whatsoever. Naya's body also took on a transparent silver hue. She made her way over to Gu Yue, but tears were already streaming down her face. I don't want to part with all of this. I don't want to part with the people around me, with teacher, and with Big Brother. Chapter 767. Gu Yue sighed. No matter how much you're unwilling to leave this life behind, you know that you have no essence. So you're destined to return to me or you'll fade into nothingness sooner or later. You said that I'll be a part of you. You'll be a part of me following your return. I'll open my entire being to you. If you're flawed, then we'll accept these flaws together. Perhaps everything will become different then. The two transparent silver figures overlapped, and both Naya and Gu Yue spread open their arms. The two figures slowly fused together, and Gu Yue's black eyes turned purple. Meanwhile, Naya seemed to be quickly maturing at a rate that was discernible to the naked eye. The two of them took on identical forms, bearing the appearance of a 19-year-old dragon spear goddess, before silver light suddenly flashed, and they both disappeared on the spot. Tang Wuling didn't know how long he'd slept for, but he hadn't slept this well in an extremely long time. It was an indescribable feeling. Gu Yue. He suddenly recalled where he was, and even though he hadn't opened his eyes yet, a blissful expression had already appeared on his face. He inhaled her unique fragrance and opened his arms to find her. Nothing had happened the night before. He merely held her the entire night. It was a purely emotional experience, but now that morning had arrived, he was struck by a sense of scorching yearning in his heart. He didn't know what he should do, but his instincts could take over from here. However, his probing hands fell flat, and he discovered that there was no one on the bed beside him. He could still clearly recall from the night before that Gu Yue's body had been very supple and completely devoid of excess fat. It gave him an indescribable sense of pleasure to hold her perfect body in his arms. Gu Yue, Tang Wuling called out again as he opened his eyes. The sunlight spilled into the cabin through the window, basking his body in a warm and comfortable sensation. The entire wooden cabin was empty and very clean. There was a very large box of food that had been placed on the table. Did she prepare breakfast for me? Tang Wuling jumped down from the bed. Where was she? He made his way over to the table before removing the lid on the box, upon which he was immediately struck by a rich aroma. Having tasted so much delicious food in the past, Tang Wuling was able to instantly identify that all of the food within this box had extremely high nutritional content. Wow, this is amazing. I haven't had ruby shrimp in a long time, and there's such a large plate of it here. It's great to be back. Only on the Douluo continent can I find all of this delicious food. The box was split up into 6 layers, each and every one of which were filled with extremely delicious and nutritious food. It was quite clear that all of this food had been prepared with a lot of effort and love. Tang Wuling certainly wasn't going to hold back. He immediately dug into this brilliant feast. Soon, all of the food had entered his stomach, and a delectable flavor lingered in his mouth as a warm and indescribably comfortable sensation spread through his entire body. The energy from the food was reaching all of his extremities, and it was a wonderful feeling. A full stomach is the best. But where's Gu Yue? Did she go attend her lessons? Why is she still not back yet? Tang Wuling opened the door and strode out of the cabin. Outside the cabin was a small yard that was filled with lush greenery and teeming with vitality. Tang Wuling took a deep breath before slowly exhaling, and he felt as if he were a new man. Where did she go? I guess I'll just wait for her in her cabin. Surely that would be a better idea than wandering off to search for her aimlessly. She knows I'm here, so she should be back soon. Thus, Tang Wuling returned to the room, yet just as he was about to go into meditation to await Gu Yue's return, a ringtone suddenly sounded from the bedside table. He turned to discover a small cell communicator lying on the table. Had Gu Yue left her communicator behind? Tang Wuling picked up the communicator and hesitated momentarily before deciding to take the call. Hello, I'm Gu Yue's friend. She didn't take her cell communicator with her before she went out today. If you have a message you'd like me to pass on to her, I can relay it as soon as she gets back, Tang Wuling said in a very polite manner. However, the person on the other side of the line remained silent. Hello? Can you hear me? Tang Wuling asked. The other side of the line still remained silent. His brows furrowed slightly. If you're not going to say anything, then I'm going to hang up. Wuling. A strange voice finally sounded from the other side of the line. For some reason, Tang Wuling's heart jolted upon hearing this voice, and a grim expression appeared on his face. Gu Yue, is that you? Tang Wuling asked. Yes, Gu Yue replied in a faint voice. Tang Wuling asked, where are you? Gu Yue didn't answer his question. Did you eat the food I left for you? I did, and it was very delicious. Hurry back now. I've only just come back, and I still don't even know how to enter the inner court. Tang Wuling replied with a smile. Gu Yue continued. I'm sorry, Wuling. What happened? Tang Wuling was only barely able to repress the sense of foreboding that had welled up in his heart. I'm leaving. Gu Yue finally replied after a long silence. Leaving? Where are you going? Tang Wuling asked in an urgent manner. Gu Yue was beginning to choke up. I have to leave, both for you and myself. I'm sorry, Wuling. Goodbye. The call was abruptly cut off at this point. Tang Wuling was left completely rooted to the spot. He dialed the number that Gu Yue had called from in a panicked manner, but he was only greeted by the sound of static. He called the number over and over again, but the same monotonous static greeted him each time. She's gone. Where did she go? Where could she go? I have to go find her. Tang Wuling hurriedly rushed out of the cabin with the cell communicator in his hand. As soon as he emerged, an irresistible burst of immense power suddenly descended from above. Tang Wuling felt as if he'd crashed into an impregnable fortress, and his body was flung back violently before thudding heavily to the ground. His strength was extremely fearsome, and even though he'd only just begun to accelerate, his momentum was still quite extraordinary. As such, the fact that he was flung back so easily was a testament to just how powerful the rebounding force he'd run into was. A figure descended from the sky. This was a handsome young man, but his handsome features were etched with fury. He waved a hand toward Tang Wuling, and the latter's body flew forward uncontrollably. He grabbed onto the front of Tang Wuling's top and asked, "Where's Naya? Where did she go?" Young Ning was always a picture of serenity, and it had been countless years since he'd last been angry. Yet at this moment, he was completely furious. Naya? Tang Wuling was still reeling from the panic of Gu Yue's departure, and he was a little slack-jawed. Young Ning raised a hand before slapping a hand onto his head. An extremely frosty sensation immediately surged through his entire body, causing him to shudder as he returned to his senses. Naya? What happened to Naya? He asked in an urgent voice. Young Ning had also calmed down at this point. It was unbefitting of a man of his status to be picking on an inner court disciple, so he released Tang Wuling before handing him a letter. Tang Wuling accepted the letter and read through its contents, upon which he was completely rooted to the spot. Teacher, I'm sorry, but I have to go. I don't want to part with you. I don't want to part with Mistress, and I don't want to part with the Sea God's Island, but I must go. Please don't be saddened by my departure. I have my own reasons for why I must leave, but I must tell you that I've always seen you as my family, just like my big brother and my parents. Please don't be sad. I'm fine, and there's no need to worry about me. After my departure, please look after my big brother for me. He's very exceptional, and if possible, I hope you'll be willing to take him as your disciple. Also, tell big brother that I'm fine, and just tell him that I've left to go find our parents. Love. Naya. The letter wasn't very long, but it told him one thing. Naya had left. Chapter 768. Gu Yue had just informed him during that call that she was leaving, and now, Young Ning was showing him a letter like this. All of the elation and bliss from the night before had completely disappeared, and he felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. The two most important women in his life had both left. This is all your fault. Naya wouldn't have left if you hadn't broken her heart. If you don't find her, humph. Yan Ning harumphed coldly, and the entire sea god's island seemed to have shuddered in the wake of his flaming wrath. Tang Wuling gave himself a vicious slap to the face. He had been overwhelmed by emotions following Dou Yue's acceptance of his confession, which had led to him ignoring his little sister, and the realization that he'd driven her away filled his heart with pain. However, even though that slap had left a bright red mark on his face, it also instantly calmed him down. You're Nai's teacher, so you must be the master of the sea god's pavilion, right? Tang Wuling pays his respects to the pavilion master. He immediately extended a bow toward Yan Ning. Yan Ning waved a hand in an impatient manner, and asked, where could Nai be? Can you think of any places? A wry smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. I can't, unfortunately. It's been over 3 years since I was last here, so I don't know where she would go. Not only did Nai leave, Dou Yue just called me and told me that she'd also left. I don't know whether their departures are related in any way, but I think our top priority now is to find them. We should search through every place where they possibly could have gone. Does Nai have any friends on the sea god's island? Seeing as Tang Wuling had calmed down so quickly and hadn't completely lost his composure, Yan Ning's expression also eased slightly. No. Nai goes out very rarely, and she barely ever leaves the sea god's island without my wife and me an accompaniment, so she has no close friends. Otherwise, how could she have progressed so quickly in her cultivation at such a young age? Tang Wuling speculated. I feel like their departures may have been related somehow. I have to ask my other friends to see if they know anything about Dou Yue. They're all members of Shrek's 7 monsters, so perhaps they'll know something. Back when I was at the academy, I was always in the outer court, so I don't know much about the inner court. I'm sure they'll have more information than I do. On top of that, Dou Yue is the successor of the Spirit Pagoda, so perhaps she went to the Spirit Pagoda headquarters. I think I should go to their headquarters right away while my friends search for her elsewhere. A peculiar look suddenly appeared on Yan Ning's face. Did you know that Dou Yue took over as the leader of Shrek's 7 monsters for you? Due to her ties with the Spirit Pagoda, she couldn't become one of Shrek's 7 monsters. She was adamant that you'd return, so she took over in your stead on a temporary basis. Tang Wuling faltered upon hearing this. I didn't know that. Yan Ning cut him off in a grim voice. Let's not talk about this for now. We'll do as you say. You go to the Spirit Pagoda, and I'll deploy people from the academy to search for the 2 of them. We'll be able to track them down as long as they haven't left Shrek City yet. You'd better pray that we find them. Otherwise, I'll hold you accountable for all of this. Tang Wuling merely nodded in response. His heart was filled with tumultuous emotions, so he had no spare capacity to worry about Yan Ning's fury. He rushed away like a speeding arrow, and as he did so, he contacted his friends via soul communicator one after another. Thankfully, their numbers hadn't changed. What? Dou Yue left? What happened? Captain. Okay, I see. No problem. You go search the Spirit Pagoda and leave the academy to us. You're right, the Spirit Pagoda is most likely where she is right now. She normally goes there a few times a month, and last time we went to the Spirit Ascension Plane to get new soul rings, the personnel at the Spirit Pagoda were referring to her in a very respectful manner, so she's most likely a very important figure there already. Yuan and Yui. Alright, we'll search the academy. You go look for her there. Ever since you disappeared, Dou Yue has been acting very strangely. I'm really worried about her too. Yui's Hang Yu. I'll go look for her in some of the restaurants we often visit. Shu Xiaoan. I'll look for her at the places where we normally cultivate. Yi Xinglin. I'll search for her in the inner court. Lizzie is with me as well. All of Tang Wuling's friends sprang into action while he rushed out of Shrek Academy, hailed a soul taxi, and set off for the Spirit Pagoda headquarters. Not long after his departure, the entire Shrek Academy was spurred into action. All of the officials of Shrek City were notified of the situation and given photographs of Naya and Dou Yue so they could also join in on the search. With the Atlas Douluo's extremely lofty status, he was able to instantly recruit the assistance of the entire city to find the 2 women who had disappeared. In reality, he didn't even bother to search for Naya within the academy. With his powers, if he were to spread his spiritual power, he could easily sense everything within the entire academy and even the entirety of Shrek City. However, he still found no traces of Naya or even traces of her aura. It was as if she'd simply vanished off the face of this world. Over at the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, Tang Wuling didn't receive any useful information. He couldn't find Dou Yue there, and he didn't belong to the Spirit Pagoda, so he had no access to any of their files and information. After that, the academy itself liaised with the Spirit Pagoda, only to be informed that Dou Yue hadn't visited the Spirit Pagoda for half a month already, so she naturally wasn't there now, either. During the next 3 days, Tang Wuling and his friends searched through virtually every single corner of Shrek City, all to no avail. Dou Yue had disappeared, as had Naya, and there was no way to contact them. Thus, Tang Wuling crashed down to earth from the peak of bliss and elation. After searching for 3 days without getting a single wink of sleep, he finally returned to Shrek Academy. Instead of returning to the inner court, he returned to the dormitory for working students, which was already empty. There were no new students here, and everything was just as it had been prior to their departure to the Douluo continent. He sat on the steps outside the dormitory building front door and stared blankly into the distance. His perpetually bright eyes had completely dulled and were severely bloodshot. Why did you leave? Why? They were finally together, and she'd admitted that she loved him. Yet now, she was gone. Only then did Tang Wuling realize the enormity of the issue that plagued her. In her heart, even the entire Shrek Academy couldn't stand against the ones who were posing a threat to her. Otherwise, why would she have left? As for Naya, Tang Wuling's heart was racked with guilt. He was feeling extremely guilty that he hadn't stayed with Naya that night to soothe and comfort her. The combination of heartbreak and guilt made Tang Wuling feel as if he were enduring constant torment, and if anyone else were in his shoes, they would have most likely had a mental breakdown already. If it weren't for the resolve and mental fortitude he built up through so much adversity, he would have most likely been a broken man at this point as well. Naya left him when she was 6, and she'd left him again at 16 years of age. Where was Naya? And where was Dou Yue? Why did they have to leave? Why couldn't they stay and face everything together with him? Why did they all have to leave him? Tang Wuling suddenly missed his days back in Dragon Valley. He was constantly laboring through one boring day after another, but at least his heart was placid and calm. Even though he missed them every single day, at least he wasn't in this much pain. Wuling. A gentle voice sounded beside him. Tang Wuling looked up to discover Dayuna standing beside him. Behind her was the new couple, Long Yue and Shumia. I heard what happened. I don't know why she left, but seeing as you 2 love one another, then you should keep searching for her. Perhaps she'll come back one day. Dayuna consoled. Tang Wuling merely shook his head in response. Shumia strode over to him and said, "Get up. Don't be a coward. Let me ask you this. Do you like her?" Tang Wuling nodded without any hesitation. That was beyond doubt. Chapter 769. I can tell that she also likes you, so why did she leave for no apparent reason? Shumia asked in a cold voice. It's because you don't make her feel safe. You're not powerful enough. Shrek Academy is indeed very powerful, but the Academy is a neutral entity. She must have some powerful enemies that she has to face, and she didn't want to endanger your life, so she left. Am I right? Tang Wuling faltered upon hearing this. She was pretty much spot on with her guess. In that case, the problem lies with you for not being powerful enough. If you want to find her, you have to become more powerful. Otherwise, even if she does come back, she'll just be forced to leave again. You deserve this pain for being weak. When you become powerful enough, no one in this world will be able to take away the people you love. Shumia's words were very cold and insulting, but they struck Tang Wuling's heart like heavy hammer blows. She was right. Why did she leave? It was because he wasn't powerful enough. But Naya. Shumia pursed her lips with disdain. Naya? You have time to worry about her. She's a 2-word battle armor master. She doesn't need a weakling like you worrying about her. You're just a 4-ring soul ancestor. What's the point of worrying about everyone when you can't even protect them? You've really got nothing going for you aside from your looks. I honestly don't know why so many girls fell for a useless coward like you. Don't say that about him. Dayuna glowered at Shumia. Shumia looked back at her with a heartfelt and meaningful expression. You foolish girl. You have to find a man who can protect you. I don't even want a man like him for free. I'm going now. As soon as her voice trailed off, she patted Long Yue on the shoulder before turning to leave. Long Yue wasn't feeling very sympathetic toward Tang Wuling in the first place, and he was struck by a strong sense of pleasure after hearing Shumia's scathing tirade against him. Following Tang Wuling and Dou Yue's successful match the night before, he chose Shumia in the end. Even he found that incredible himself. After all, he and Shumia had only just met on that night. However, the more he thought about it, the more convinced he was that he'd made the right decision. Shumia had a straightforward personality, and she admired power, while power was something that he had in abundance. He really liked girls like Shumia who were violent and abrasive on the surface, but thoughtful and compassionate on the inside. Mia, wait for me. Long Yue hurriedly caught up to her before asking, did you know Tang Wuling from before this? Shumia shot a glance at him. No. I don't acquaint myself with cowards like him. All of the girls nowadays swoon over pretty faces, but what's the point in having a handsome face if you're a coward? I'm a pragmatist, so I chose you. You're ugly, but you're decently sturdy. Long Yue's expression instantly stiffened upon hearing this. Is that a compliment? Shumir glared at him. Of course. What did you think it was? A wry smile appeared on Long Yue's face. You've heard about my past, right? About how Shrek's 7 monsters defeated us during the Continental Young Elites tournaments? Shumir nodded in response. I did. I thought those stories were exaggerated, but after fighting you yesterday, I have to admit that Dou Yue and the others did indeed achieve quite a notable feat. Long Yue continued. The one leading the team wasn't Dou Yue back then. Shumir faltered slightly upon hearing this. Oh. Then who was it? I don't know too much about this. Who was leading the team at the time? In reality, she really was rather unfamiliar with these events. As an inner court disciple, most of her time was spent in seclusion researching her soul tools. They were led by none other than the man you just announced to be a coward. At the time, I was a 6-ring soul emperor and a 2-word battle armor master. He and Dou Yue weren't even 1-word battle armor masters at the time, and they were only 4-ring soul ancestors, yet they combined their powers to defeat me. I really don't want to admit it, but I have to concede that Tang Wulin is no coward, and he's pretty powerful. He may only be a 4-ring soul ancestor, but even I feel threatened when he unleashes his power. Ha! Diana hurriedly turned to Tang Wulin and urged, don't listen to her. She's just saying that because she doesn't know how strong you are. Tang Wulin shook his head with a wry smile. She's right. The fact of the matter is that I'm not powerful enough to protect them, so they both left me. I'm a failure, aren't I? Diana gently laid a hand on his arm. Don't think that about yourself. Even if they've all left, you still have me. I'm not going anywhere. If you want, I can stay with you for the rest of my life. Tang Wulin shook her head. You're a good girl, Yuna, but I've already made myself very clear during the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention. My heart can't hold a second person, at least not at the moment, but don't worry. I won't wallow in self-pity forever. I have many things I still have to do. They left, so I'll just have to find them. Senior disciple sister Shumir is right. They're both powerful enough to protect themselves, so I'm the weakest link here. I have to grow more powerful as quickly as possible, and I'll definitely find them. Tang Wulin had always had a resolute personality, especially in the face of adversity. This incident had dealt him an extremely heavy blow. He'd just come back, and the 2 most important people in his life immediately left him. However, Shumir's words had completely enlightened him. He felt as if there were still daggers digging into his heart, but he still had to become more powerful no matter what. With that in mind, Tang Wulin rose to his feet. I have to go to the inner court, Yuna. I'm going to recover from this and come back stronger. You'll always be my friend and sister, but we can never be lovers. I'm sorry. After his voice trailed off, Tang Wulin departed and headed straight toward the inner court. He didn't want to hurt another girl, so he had to make things very clear to her. Otherwise, he'd only be causing more misunderstandings. Diana stood rooted to the spot, staring blankly at his departing figure with complex emotions surging through her heart. Tang Wulin had already been assigned a dormitory room, but it obviously wasn't on the Sea God's island. Atlas Douluo Yanming was furious about Nai's departure, and even though he hadn't handed down any punishments to Tang Wulin, he definitely wasn't going to give him any privileges, either. The school building in the inner court was very large, and the dormitory area took up an even larger area. There were far fewer inner court disciples compared to their outer court counterparts, so even though each disciple had a room to themselves, the dormitory building here was never full. After returning to his room, Tang Wulin stripped off his clothes before making his way directly into the bathroom. He hadn't showered for a few days, so he had to cleanse himself, then take a good rest before embarking on his quest for more power. Seeing as he couldn't find them, all he could do was work hard to become more powerful and await their return. Tang Wulin firmly believed that Naya and Dou Yue would return. Either that, or he'd go and find them after he became powerful enough. There was no point in stumbling around blindly without any objectives. Shumir was right. His weakness had caused all of this to happen. Thus, a target appeared in his heart once again. He was too weak, so he needed more power. After turning on the tap, Tang Wulin was just about to take a shower when he suddenly realized that he was wearing a new necklace. He had been wallowing in anxiety, guilt, and pain these past few days, so he failed to notice this necklace. The necklace had a thin silver chain with an oval pendant attached to it. It was a small scale that was only around the size of a pigeon egg, and it was entirely silver in color with complex patterns all over its surface. This was a silver scale. Furthermore, through the understanding that he developed of his own bloodline and the dragon type auras in the Dragon Valley, he could determine that this was a silver dragon scale. Had Dou Yue left this to him, he carefully picked up the scale and stared blankly at it. For some reason, as he stroked the scale, he was struck by the feeling that Dou Yue was standing right before his eyes. Upon closer inspection, he discovered that this scale wasn't of a complete oval shape. Instead, one side was an oval while the other side was slightly curved back, giving it the appearance of a miniature shield. There were a total of 4 layers of patterns on the scale, and they stacked together to create what almost seemed like a 3-dimensional structure. The ends of the patterns were all curled upward, so 3-dimensional images could be cast from the scale as soon as even the slightest ray of light shone onto it. Tang Wulin reflexively turned the scale around, reflecting the light onto the walls, and he was surprised to discover that the lights formed dragon-shaped projections. Dou Yue loves me. She only left because she had to. The sorrow in Tang Wulin's eyes gradually faded, and was replaced by a resolute expression of determination. He was most concerned that Dou Yue didn't love him anymore, but after seeing this scale, he was able to bolster his own resolve. Chapter 770. Dou Yue had left because she had no other choice. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been in so much pain before. Senior disciple sister Shumir was right. He wasn't able to keep her because he was too weak. He reflexively tightened his grasp around the silver scale in his hand, and he felt its sharp edges. He took a deep breath. Power was now his number 1 pursuit. Dou Yue, wait for me. No matter how many obstacles stand in our way, we'll overcome them together. Wait for me to become more powerful. With that in mind, Tang Wulin pulled out his soul communicator before dialing a number. Zinglin, can you come over to my place for a bit? Also, tell everyone there's no need to keep looking. I've searched through every place she could possibly be during the past few days. She's intentionally avoiding us, so there's no way that we can find her. A vast expanse of white mist lay in the distance. Dou Yue stood in silence on a platform that was hovering in midair. Behind her stood the majestic Spirit Pagoda. This was the highest point of the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, and it was known as the Cloud Scaling Platform. She had been standing there for a very long time, and her right hand remained in front of her chest the entire time, as if she were holding something to herself. It hurt so much, but why do I enjoy this kind of pain? Is this what love is? At this moment, she'd reverted back to her original appearance with black hair and black eyes. She wore a long white dress, and it was quite apparent from the golden patterns running along the edge of the dress, as well as the badge on her chest, that she'd already become an extremely important figure in the Spirit Pagoda. She slowly spread open her hand to reveal a shimmering golden rhomboid scale sitting atop her palm. The scale was connected to a thin golden chain, and 4 layers of vibrant patterns stacked on top of one another could be seen on the surface of the scale. One side of the scale was curved inward, thereby making it resemble a miniature shield. She carefully strung the necklace around her own neck, and it trailed down her chest behind the collar of her dress. She cast her gaze toward the distance in the direction that Shrek Academy stood. Are you still unwilling to part with him? A gentle voice sounded from behind her. Dou Yue hurriedly turned around, and she didn't even have to look to know who had arrived behind her. She immediately extended a respectful bow and greeted, "Teacher, Heavenly Phoenix Douluo Leng Yao." She slowly made her way over to her. Shrek Academy is indeed a place that's full of allure, but seeing as you've chosen to leave, you shouldn't second guess your decision. Are you unwilling to part with the academy or someone attending the academy? Dou Yue shuddered upon hearing this. How did you know? Leng Yao smiled and said, "How could I not know? It's the Sea God Fate matchmaking convention. In the past, I also." Her voice suddenly trailed off. There was a hint of sorrow appeared in her eyes. "I just don't understand why you chose to leave. A man who can catch your eye naturally has to be extremely exceptional. I've met him before, and he is indeed a brilliant talent. You can try convincing him to join us." Dou Yue shook her head with a wry smile on her face. "I don't want to place him in a difficult position. He's already a member of the Tang sect. If I hadn't left, left, there's probably a greater chance that he would have convinced me to join the Tang sect than vice versa. You know my aspirations, teacher. I can't allow myself to be shackled by relationships. A hint of approval intermingled with melancholy flashed through Ling Yaoshu's eyes. You carry far too heavy of a burden, child. I'm very glad to see that you're so driven and determined, but for your sake, I have to remind you that it's very likely that love only comes once. If you miss it, that may be your only chance at love squandered. Also, if we continue to progress according to our plan, you'll continue to enjoy a meteoric rise. Perhaps when you find yourself at the pinnacle of the continent someday, you'll look down to discover that there's an insurmountable gulf between the two of you. In that case, it'll be even more impossible for the two of you to be together. You're still young, so even if you choose to spend some more time with him, I won't blame you. Yue suddenly shook her head in an urgent manner. There's no need for that. I'm not as determined as you think I am, teacher. If I continue to be with him, it'll be very difficult for me to strengthen my resolve later on. Ling Yaoshu heaved a faint sigh. All right then. In that case, everything will progress according to our plan. You'll be facing a total of 4 opponents, all of which are the top prodigies of the Spirit Pagoda. Defeat them, and you'll become the #1 successor to the chairman. 4. Every loss that you take, your ranking in that hierarchy will slip by 1 position. During the upcoming period of time, I'm going to be exerting more pressure on you to stimulate your latent potential. I believe that you're the best. After all, you're the only one in the history of the Spirit Pagoda to have reached the pinnacle of the spirit of this realm at below 20 years of age. Once you make a breakthrough, the world will be your oyster. You'll be assured to become a titled Douluo prior to turning 30. Tang Wuling looked at the shimmering golden pieces of armor laid out on the table before him, and he turned to Yue with an expression of genuine gratitude. Thank you. All of his friends were here with him. During these past few days, they'd also been doing everything they could to search for Yue. She laid a hand on Tang Wuling's shoulder. Don't be sad, boss. Yue must have her reasons for doing this. She'll be back for sure. I know that she'll definitely come back, which is why I must become more powerful. Otherwise, if I get left too far behind by her, how will I be able to progress by her side? Tang Wuling wore a faint smile on his face, and at the very least, his friends were unable to sense anything amiss about him. Yuan and Yue heaved a faint sigh. You're always so strong, and you always come back stronger following setbacks. This is where I lose to you. Yi Xinglan said. I presume you'll need to prime yourself before undergoing the fusion process, right? Tang Wuling shook his head in response. There's no need for that. I'm not that fragile. If I have trouble even fusing with this suit of one-word battle armor, then how can I continue to call myself your captain? That's right. All of the pieces of armor on the table were the remaining components of his suit of one-word battle armor. Yi Xinglan had created these pieces of armor for him in person during the past few years, and all that was left now was for him to fuse with these pieces of armor. After that, he would become a one-word battle armor master. This was something that he'd once thought would only happen in his wildest dreams, but at this moment, he only wore a faint smile on his face that was completely devoid of excitement. Tang Wuling picked up the breastplate as he spoke. The breastplate was the largest piece of armor, as well as the core for the entire suit of battle armor. The design of the breastplate was simplistic yet refined. It was constructed from 2 rectangular pieces of armor, and it was to be put on as a complete single piece of armor. The piece of armor was quite heavy, and Tang Wuling said, "Get back a little." Everyone hurriedly retreated to give him a wide berth. In the next instant, Tang Wuling's eyes began to glow with bright golden light. Powerful blood essence fluctuations then erupted from his body like a substantial wave. She was the one who displayed the biggest reaction among everyone present. He let loose a muffled groan as he took an involuntary step backward, and his face abruptly paled as he sat onto the ground. He immediately activated his suit of battle armor, which quickly encapsulated his entire body, and only then did his complexion improve slightly. However, he was still quite stunned by that abrupt development. Everyone else had also been affected to different extents. They all felt a peerlessly powerful burst of aura erupt from Tang Wuling's body, and they were all struck by a sense of oppression, as if they were in the presence of a vastly superior being. As dense golden mist began to surge forth from his body, that feeling only became even more pronounced. Yuan and Yue and Yi Xinglan were the least affected by this, yet both of them were forced to take a backward step. In contrast, everyone else backed away at least 2 more steps. Everyone wore astonished expressions on their faces. One had to realize that objectively, all of them were more powerful than Tang Wuling. They were all 5 ring Soul Kings, as well as one-word battle armor masters. But even so, the bloodline aura erupting from Tang Wuling's body was forcing them into submission almost in an irresistible manner. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.